I just want to talk briefly about the book. I wrote a chapter about the response to COVID as kind of a model for what the Great Reset would be. It was really a trial run of the Great Reset with this. You know, one thing, Mike talked about the idea that this is a conspiracy theory. And I think one thing you'll find from this book is that the Great Reset is really underway already. And there's some COVID, this global response, as you say, this was an empire. This was a worldwide response dictated by some bureaucrats in the United States and Europe that changed the way everyone around the world lived. And the book, I really salute Michael Walsh for getting a great cast of writers to look at this from so many angles, the way it's happening. He talks about the economic, the political, the personal aspects of the Great Reset. And I'll just say one thing, as far, I've been writing about COVID and following all the damage it has done by the lockdowns, the mask mandates, the vaccine mandates, all these measures that were futile. And but even I was surprised. David Goldman, who's the deputy editor of the Asia Times, he talks about what happened financially during the pandemic, and he writes that the most radical transformation of world economic policy in modern history, with the possible exception of World War II, was what happened during the pandemic. The economic landscape that has emerged after the COVID-19 recession is radically different from what preceded it. The world economy has already been reset, and the perpetrators of the Great Reset want to make those changes irreversible. And here's the figure that really grabbed me. 1/5 of the industrial nation's GDP shifted to the balance sheets of government during the COVID-19 pandemic. By far, the biggest and fastest transfer of financial resources to governments in world history. And transfer payments in the United States, they jumped to 75% of federal expenditures, so leaving vast numbers of low-income people dependent on the government for most of their money. And a handful of technology, of course, as brick and mortar businesses were being bankrupted, Silicon Valley profited, and Douglas writes that a handful of technology giants dominated stock returns in the sudden concentration of wealth not witnessed since Theodore Roosevelt's administration. And then he also looks ahead because the problem is that this was the trial run for the Great Reset, and now climate change is, of course, the never-ending emergency because plagues come and go, but there's always weather, there's always climate changing, so it's a constant emergency. And he crunches some numbers on it to just what it would take to fulfill the green agenda. How much money would it take to build up this electric infrastructure for all these electric cars and everything else? And he calculates that in the service of the quixotic goal of eliminating carbon emissions, it's on a scale that is so ambitious it would absorb virtually the entire public and private investment budget of the West for the next 30 years. Not even in wartime has the industrial world been subject to such a radical economic reordering. So that's what's underway now, and this book is a great, it puts this in historical perspective that Mike said is nothing new. This is Plato's dream of a philosopher-king society. It's what the Bolshevik and French revolutions were going to do, was to remake mankind. And COVID, and I can talk later about this in my chapter, COVID was the trial of this, the trial run of the Great Reset, and it was the greatest public health disaster in history, the response to it. It was, I think, except arguably for the Great Depression, it was the greatest public policy mistake in history. We had 1 in 3 people worldwide losing income. We had 100 million people pushed into poverty, all for these measures, these lockdowns with no discernible benefit. So, and now they're talking about that, Schwab actually says this with a straight face, the chutzpah is amazing, that the COVID-19 pandemic is a window of opportunity for us to now transform the rest of society. And what it really is, I think it's a window of opportunity for us to see this is what they want to do. They want to wreak even more destruction with these plans.